Hey there, Robert John Hadfield here from Audiomover, and I've got something really cool to show you today. And you know, Madonna's been in the news again lately, and for some stuff that happened while I'm recording this. It was about a week ago, I think, at the Grammys. And what I'm going to show you here, this is really cool. This was kind of a limited edition thing. And you know, you don't have to like Madonna to appreciate the massive cultural impact she had. The truth is, I actually liked a lot of her music. I didn't want to. I was a kind of a metalhead back in the 80s, but she had some cool stuff. And I remember there was a bunch of tunes, they were just catchy. And she was a master at something that a lot of artists don't get, and it's the need to reinvent yourself, to make sure that you're always new. And she was amazing at that. She was incredible. That like every time she'd put something out, she'd just be different, and you just kind of grew to expect that she wasn't going to be the same she was. You know, when this particular song came out, True Blue, I don't know if you remember this, but this came off of the album sold enormously. But when this came out, she kind of was reinventing herself again. She had this short hair. She kind of had this look that fit more like it came out of the 50s. Kind of this pure, innocent approach to this song specifically. And she was great at this, you know, and you compare it to other people. For example, we did a video recently, I'm not sure if it's live yet, but about Quiet Riot. You know, and when they put out their first album, Metal Health, well, that wasn't their first album, I know. It was their third album, but the first one that like really made them superstars. You know, they were huge and they sold millions and millions of copies. Well, then they put out the next album and it was basically the same thing as the first album. And we just got bored, really. I mean, it's hard to believe, but you know, one moment you're on top of the world and then you don't change and then you fail. And then the other thing is, though, if you change too much, then you lose your fans. And so she was just great at this very thing that you need to be successful. So anyway, this song, the song True Blue, I don't know if you remember this, but it was, true love, you're the one I'm dreaming of. True blue, baby, I love you. Anyway, that was how the song went. And it kind of had this, like I said, an older kind of 50s feel to it. She recorded this album. For those of you that grew up in the 80s or remember the 80s, remember when she was with Sean Penn? That was this period. You know, she got married to Sean Penn and she was just crazy about Sean Penn. By the way, Sean Penn, I actually really like Sean Penn. And if you like Sean Penn, there's a movie, I think it's on Netflix, that came out not that long ago, and it's Sean Penn and Mel Gibson, and it's called The Madman and the Professor. It's about the creation of the Oxford Dictionary. If you haven't seen it, go look it up. It's worth your time. It's an excellent show. Anyway, so her and Sean Penn, that was the thing, you know, and everybody knew about her and Sean Penn. And so this whole album was dedicated to him. And this song specifically, apparently Sean Penn used to say True Blue or something about being in love, and so she wrote a whole song about it. Now, this album that this came off of was called True Blue. So she had a whole album called True Blue. It wasn't just the song. The album True Blue sold 25 million copies. 25 million. That's enormous. I mean, it made it one of the biggest selling albums of all time. Not many people ever get close to that number. And to give you an idea, you'll remember some of these songs. Remember the song Live to Tell? That was on this album. Papa Don't Preach? That was on this album. Open Your Heart? That was on this album. And there was La Isla Bonita. Remember that one? That was on this. And then, of course, this was too. And this one, I think, hit something like number 3 on the Billboard charts by itself. But this album was something, it was number 1 in almost 30 countries. That's how big this thing was. So it was a huge selling album. She was a cultural phenomenon, whether you like it or not. She was huge. And so anyway, so this was the single that she put out for the song True Blue. And I don't know if you remember this, but and younger people don't realize that when, you know, when an album would come out, like this album, for example, they would go through a series of releasing singles. So True Blue, the album came out, and then what would happen is over the next several months after the album came out, they would release singles, and that's what these were. These were smaller records that spun at a different speed, but they would just be one song. They'd just take a song off the album, and they'd use this partly to promote the album and partly to sell songs and then find out what songs were the biggest selling songs in the nation. And this is part of the measurement of all that. So True Blue, this was released as a single off of that album, and so this was it. And I bought this way back when, partly because I would do DJing sometimes, so that's one of the reasons I have so many records. It's because I bought them to play at these events. Right, so let's flip it over and look on the back. And of course, here in this case they have the lyrics. Song True Blue here, Madonna. And then it says down here, produced by Madonna and Stephen Bray. Stephen Bray worked with Madonna even before she got popular. She was, they just had this working relationship, and most of the success that Stephen Bray had in his career was just writing and producing Madonna. But he was in another band that you might maybe remember called The Breakfast Club back in the 80s. Yes, there was a band called The Breakfast Club, not just the movie. And they had a song that was kind of a semi-hit. It was a real dance song called Right on Track. And it was something like, feeling back, right on track, right on track, is that going to get you back? Anyway, it was actually a cool song, and I think I have the 45 for that somewhere too. I'll bust it out sometime. But Stephen Bray was the guy that wrote a lot of these songs for her or with her, and she gets a lot of songwriting credit, and I don't really know how much she was involved. I mean, I've seen everything from, these songs were largely her ideas to all she really did was add a couple of lines of lyric. I don't know. But anyway, she worked with this Stephen Bray guy. She actually was dating him early on. They were a couple. And then, anyway, when she was first getting going. So anyway, this is a production of Stephen Bray and Madonna, but I want to show you what it looks like inside because this is so cool. So this was actually released on blue vinyl, and not just blue vinyl, but it's also clear. And can you see that there? You see how neat that is? I love this stuff. So this was once again, as it says here on the side, I don't know how limited edition it was, but it says limited edition blue vinyl pressing. And so this was Sire Records, and I'm going to kind of see if we can get that focused in there a little bit so you can kind of see a little bit better what's going on there. And isn't that cool how that's clear? Anyway, so this was blue vinyl. And I've talked about this before, but this is one of the things that made records so cool. It's things like this where you'd have these unique different ways of presenting the music. And of course, True Blue, the song, why not make the vinyl blue? And then maybe sell extras because of that. So but then what they would do with these 45s is they would frequently, once again, use this as promotion for the album, and then they'd have the song from the album there, and it says here, produced by Madonna and Stephen Bray, True Blue, Madonna, Stephen Bray as the songwriters, and this is from the album True Blue. And then what they would do, though, is on side B, they do a variety of different things. I mean, some people would use side B to put another just kind of throwaway track from the album. That was very, very common. Or they would put sometimes a song that maybe the producer from another band, and they wanted to promote that. There was a lot of different things that would get thrown on B-sides of. So if you ever hear B-side, as a term, that's kind of what it meant. What's on the B-side? What's the flip side? The one that was considered less important or not as good. So it's interesting what they put on the B-side of this little record. So they had this wildly huge, famous, popular song that was on the A side, and then you flip it over on the other side, and you see this song that's called Ain't No Big Deal. Now, you'll also see that this was written by Stephen Bray. Well, this is a relatively unknown song, although it was a Madonna song. Now, when Madonna first signed her record contract, it was something a little different because she didn't sign a record contract to put out a certain number of albums. She actually signed her original contract to put out a number of songs. And all she was going to do originally was release 2 singles. So she didn't even have a record contract. this was going to be one of them. And so they recorded the song, and this was supposed to end up, they thought would even end up on a first album, and it just never did. This didn't show up anywhere until here. So they basically blew the dust off of this and put it on the back of this album. And you'll see here that it says it came off of an album called Revenge of the Killer Bees, volume, does it say volume 2? Yeah, I think it says volume 2. So really where this album, what they were kind of promoting here was that Sire Records basically had a bunch of these extra songs from different bands, and they released albums with just this extra stuff. And this just happened to be one of Madonna's early recordings. This at this point she was on her. This was her third album. This is her third studio album. And so, so this would have been recorded several years earlier. And so they just threw this out there to just push this other album that Sire Records put out. But it was kind of cool to get these singles, because you'd get sometimes this oddball stuff that you didn't even know existed. And so in this case, you get this odd Madonna song, kind of random thing. They didn't just throw an extra song off the album. They gave you this extra cool piece of music that you may not have even known existed. So anyway, it's pretty cool. And then once again, this blue vinyl is just awesome. I loved stuff like this, and I buy things. A lot of us would buy this stuff just because it was blue vinyl and we thought it was neat. And so, if you like these videos we put out, please like and subscribe to this channel. If you just sat through this whole video, listen to me talk about Madonna, please like and subscribe. And also, if you have old audio and videotapes, of course, the company that produces all this stuff is Audiomover. Audiomover is the company that takes your old audio and videotapes and converts them to digital. So if you have old audio or videotapes, or if you know somebody that does, old home recordings, cassette tapes of who knows what, let them know about us. Or you yourself, go to audiomover.com and you can start an order there. And so anyway, with that, have a fantastic day.